So what I wanted to share a little bit, and I just kind of pulled these slides together in thinking about what is most helpful, is how to set your home up for success, which is basically at the beginning of the year, how we talk to teachers about how we set up our classroom for success. So I kind of just pulled together different things that we do in our, that we do in thinking about what is the most successful for our kids. So probably in 2 weeks, I'll do a talk about communication. I was going to do it today, but it's one that I feel like everyone should hear. So I put a pause on that. And I wanted to talk about things you can do in your house. One of the biggest things that is so tricky for so many of our kids is too much language. We talk about so much to our teachers about decreasing their language and increasing visuals and nonverbals, because a lot of our kids, when they hear all of this language, they get overwhelmed and they shut it down. And kids with language delays, kids with processing delays, the more language you use, the more overwhelmed they get. So what we try to do is create schedules. We literally at school create schedules. We create visuals for the cubbies, which is basically like a schedule for what you need to do to put on all your snow gear. We create a visual in the bathroom for what it looks like, the sequence of like washing hands. So what's really important at home is having a schedule for things that you feel like you have to prompt all the time. These are the things that if you're overusing language, the best alternative is to decrease your language and create a checklist or create a visual schedule. Some of your kids are readers, so you don't need the pictures. Some of your kids need the pictures. It doesn't really matter. It's really about creating a visual. So like bedtime routine is notoriously tricky for kids because one, they're tired, they're kind of dysregulated. And so what we as parents are constantly doing is saying, go brush your teeth, go brush your teeth, go brush your teeth, put your pajamas on. And we feel like a broken record. And then what happens is our kids get so distracted. Visuals are really, really helpful in making that time productive and not a fight and not a back and forth. Because if you allow your child the glorious use of a dry erase marker, you create this and you laminate it, or even you don't even need a dry erase. We just use dry erase markers so we don't fly through paper. But if you create one of these on a whiteboard or you print it out and you allow your child the ability to check off the boxes, they then are in charge, and all you're doing is pointing to the next thing that they have to do. You can use this for anything, getting ready in the morning, getting ready for bed. And if it's bath time, all you're doing is pointing to the schedule. And I'm saying to my daughter, Julia, look, and pointing to the bath time. And then she sees that it's bath time. And to get that check off, she is going to do the bath and coming back to check it off. So all you're doing is guiding rather than reminding and prompting. The reason we do it in school a lot is to, one, increase their self-help skills, but also so that they feel independent about it. Washing hands is multiple steps, but if we show them the first turn on the faucet, put the soap on the hands, put the hands under this faucet, all those steps, then we're slowly going to be able to fade ourselves out. Then they can just use the pictures. Then we can slowly, they're not even looking at the pictures anymore, and they're just doing the process. And they're not having to look at every step, but they've been able to watch the steps and be able to do it more independently every time. Another way to thinking about like schedules in general and visuals in general, there's schedules you can create and visual sequences. There's also, for many things, you want to break it down even smaller and give them a first then type board. You could create this on a whiteboard. Like our teachers literally walk around with whiteboards to be able to throw a first then at any time. If a child's really having a hard time transitioning from one thing to another, you can just draw a picture of Legos, arrow, lunch. First, we're going to finish Legos, then we're going to have lunch. This is a really great tool for kids who have a hard time visioning what the next step is and get really stuck in the whatever they're doing. Kids really need to understand what that next step is and what the next thing that they're going to be doing. And for some kids, that's really tricky. So you're asking them to get in the car to go to the park. They just are fighting getting in the car. But if you drew on a piece of paper or a whiteboard, first car, then playground, that's going to help them realize, oh, there's actually a purpose for this car trip. And that's going to help them understand why they need the motivation to get in the car. For school, we use it a lot around like kids that are just need to help refocus, a lot around executive functioning of, hey, Julia, I noticed you're kind of wandering around the classroom. Right now is first clean up, then go wash hands, or first wash hands, then snack. So there's a lot of times that you want to break down even a schedule to a first then, so they understand my first step right now is this, and then my next step is that, or whatever. Oh, where's my little, so the timers, this is just one of many, many, many timers that we use to help transitions, to help keeping kids in one space when we're trying to get them to focus on one thing. We use this is like an oil timer, there's sand timers, there's your phone timers. This is really helpful in thinking about how to help kids focus on what they're doing at any given time. For example, good times to use timers are when you have 5 minutes more of TV and then we're going to go take the bath. You show them the schedule is first TV, then we go upstairs for the bath. But you also can put a timer in front of the TV or next to them. So then the onus is off of us as the adult. And the onus is on, okay, I'm going to flip the timer. And in 5 minutes, we know what's going to happen. So they are not arguing with you. They're arguing with a timer that is now out of the oil drops because it's a 5-minute timer. And it allows them to see how much time they have left. It's really hard for our kids to visualize time. It's hard for all kids to visualize time. What they need is that visual around time and around how to think about time. So using a visual is incredibly helpful in helping them count down time. And then on the flip side is also helping them understand how much time they have. So a lot of parents have a hard time with dinner and getting them kids to sit at dinner for an extended period of time. What we like to do is say, hey, I notice your body's getting a little bit wiggly. Let's set the timer for 5 more minutes and then you can be all done at dinner. Even if they're done with dinner, we like to do at snack and lunch a lot of chat time because it's great conversational time. So we set the timer of, hey, if you can stay with us for 5 more minutes, then you can be all done. So we use the timer in that way of let's do snack for 5 more minutes, or even like they're playing Magna-Tiles and we're trying to help kids stretch their sustained attention. We'll set a timer for, we're going to do Magna-Tiles for 5 more minutes, and then you can go and do this or something like that. It's a nice way to get them to stay with something and to help with transitions. Another,
sorry, just to jump in. If 5 minutes is too long, you can always do a 3-minute timer. It doesn't have to be the set amount of time, whatever works for your family, but then growing with it of great, 3 minutes seems pretty easy for him now or her, and then switching to 5. And then just one other quick idea for like a dinner time is having to help them sit for the extra 5 minutes, even if they are done, having little cards at the table or joke books or like things like that, that you can pull out for little conversation starters, instead of it being, how was your day at school? Fine. And then having it be like the flatlined end of a conversation. You'll be able to pull more information out of them by just asking silly little questions around the table and each person taking a turn.
Can I ask a question on the timer? I'm just thinking about with our daughter, sometimes I find that she can be anxious to begin with, and we're in fact, this couldn't be more apropos right now for us. We struggle with schedules a lot at home, and so this is helpful. But do you ever see a time where putting the timer is actually adding more anxiety instead of helping her stay on schedule? Because where we find is like we try to be as gentle as we can and remind her to move along, and we're not using enough visual cues, so we need to be doing that more. And then there comes this point where it's like, well, you need to get in the car and go to school. Like, we are out of time. And then it becomes an actual meltdown situation. Like, we're trying to improve that and struggling a bit with like, does adding more structure around that help or hurt the process? You know what I mean?
So I think you can give her a little bit of control around it, and you can say, okay, Molly, we have, so this little clock thing that is now up, this might be really helpful for her, is in your, like, if you have a clock in your house, which funny enough, like we don't, I mean, everything is now so digital, but you can use like a time timer, which has red. And so what you want her to do is visualize the natural consequence of what's happening. If she gets anxious about time, but then all of a sudden you're out of time and it turns into like a frenzy and she gets upset about it, showing her how much time is left and giving her a little bit of control about it, of like, we have 10 minutes before we have to leave to go to school. Do you want me to give you a reminder at 2 minutes or at 5 minutes that you need to put your shoes on or whatever? Giving her a little bit of control can definitely help, but also giving her the visuals. So this is like a, I don't know, like a creation someone made that you basically put on like the clocks we have at school to help kids know that, like, okay, when the big hand gets to the squirrel, it means we're going outside. Because we don't really care if kids can tell time yet, but we do want them to get the idea of time. A lot of what we do at school, we don't really use the animal thing, but this is like an easy visual. We'll use a dry erase marker and color in the time on the regular clock so that they can see when the big hand is past the red, then that means it's time to go to lunch or it's time to go here. Basically, everything is on an app on your phone, so you could set it up that way, or like the Alexa will count down for you, things like that. I think, and I don't know, Katie may have other ideas, giving her a little bit of control, but also saying, remember, Molly, what happened yesterday was we got to a point where then we were out of time, and then it got to where you got really nervous about getting in the car and rushing, because you definitely is not a rusher, but she needs that time to process it. So thinking about it not in the heat of the moment, of what's going to be the next, okay, first we're going to do this, then we're going to do this type of approach.
Yeah, and I don't know what areas in the morning that she struggles with the most, if it's like eating breakfast or getting dressed or just getting ready to get out the door.
She just
But-
stalls like the whole
What's
process.
that?
She just stalls the whole, it's hard to get her doing anything in the morning and at night sometimes.
So what might be great is those days, maybe on the weekend, like doing kind of like a practice round, or if you do have somewhere to go, but you have a lot of time to be able to get there, take a picture of her all dressed in the morning. And then when she's fully ready to walk out the door and has everything on that she needs, take another picture of her to print those, to be like, hey, Molly, you can do it. Here's all the things you need. And showing her a picture of her, like with a thumbs up and it all being done, as like little cues to remind her the next morning of like, oh yeah, there's my hat, my gloves, my this, my that. And maybe a picture of her, she might be more attracted to versus just like the social storyboard maker pictures.
That's good, thanks.
There is Sarah Ward is who Katie and I learned from a long time ago, and she does have this whole doing, done, and you kind of start backwards and you show the done and then you show the doing and then you show the do. So the done is her dress and the doing is her getting dressed. So for our kids, they need that visual of what's the end product, so that even if you put that by the back door of, remember, this is what we look like when we go out the door, that might help her kind of get to those parts. Another thing that is very helpful is our thought bubble. We will draw thought bubbles all the time to help kids think about what we're thinking about versus what they're thinking about. So we'll do like 2 stick figures and 2 thought bubbles. So like if we're thinking about transitions, there's a million ways to use thought bubbles, but like transitions, Julia, you're thinking about that you want to keep doing Legos. I'm thinking about that we need to go to OT or something like that. So helping her think that her thought and your thought are different. And we need to get to one thought, which is we both need to get the thought of we have to go to OT or swim or whatever. And so helping her talking to her about, okay, so you're thinking about still wanting to playing Legos, but right now we need to get dressed. So what do you need to do to shift your thought to helping get dressed to go to swim class or whatever, is one way to help them think about, stop their kind of thought process, which is going in the direction of whatever they're thinking about, and shifting to what you're thinking about. It's really kind of an overall perspective taking helper tool for all kids. Another way we use it all the day, all the time at school is, one, in tricky moments, and two, in inflexible moments. Tricky moments would be when a child's really having a big reaction about something, to hear what their thought is, because sometimes we have no idea and we want to help them, but we have no idea what's making them so upset. It is so much easier to draw it out than to make them talk so much. So we could draw out like whatever, an example of like, I see you're really upset, and we could ask them what's making you upset, or we could see that they're upset because they wanted the blue chair and they got the red chair. So we could draw that for them and help them shift to, right now, so-and-so's in the blue chair and the blue chair can be yours the next time. Kind of drawing out the scenario and helping them see what was happening and how their processing was not kind of the group plan processing. And then there's this piece of when they're really kind of inflexible or stuck about something, drawing that out in the same way of, you're really wanting the blue chair, but right now it's Molly's turn with the blue chair. So right now you need to be thinking about the red chair or the green chair. Katie, do you have other examples of thought bubble that I'm not thinking of?
No, I think those are great. I would suggest also helping them envision when they're going to be able to get to do their thoughts. Sometimes that helps in like sticky situations of like, I want to finish my game and we have to go to OT type of situation. Like, when we come back, you can finish your game, just so that way they know their idea is not just completely out the window. Other than that, yeah.
Yeah, we do a lot of oh no, oh yes, like, oh no, we have to put a pause on the game. Oh yes, we get to finish the game when we get back from swim. Mm-hmm. So giving them the strategy of, okay, this wasn't my plan, but we're going to get to the plan, because sometimes kids flood so quickly that they forget they actually will be able to do it. It just is going to take a little bit for them to get there. Oh, there, I didn't know if I put this slide in. There it is. So we do a lot of oh no, oh yes, with what's happening in the moment is a big flood of kind of that inflexible thinking. And what we want to get them to see is, oh yes, we can do this. We just need a strategy. And initially kids we feed them the strategy of, okay, oh no, we have to put our game down. We need to take some breaths. We need to go into the cozy corner. But remember, oh yes, you're going to get to finish this. So we'll kind of give them that strategy to help them with the moment, or we're always going to give them the oh yes until they can start to come up with the oh yes for themselves. And they will. It's interesting to watch how kids, we'll feed them the oh yes of, oh yes, you get to come back and finish the game. And slowly over time, they'll start to come up with the oh yes on their own. Another thing that I talk a lot about with parents is how to help kids in the unstructured times at home. And that's why I was thinking we should do this before the February break, because it's a lot of unstructured time. Even kids that are coming to camp, it's kind of a longer day at home. It's a 3-day weekend coming up. What we find really helpful is creating a choice board of things for them to do. A lot of kids are not great at just spontaneously, naturally coming up with what to do at home. Although I'm confident everyone has 4,000 toys at home, they're not good at just going over to a puzzle and doing the puzzle, or if they're great at puzzles, knowing what to do once they finish that puzzle. So what you could start with is something like this, where you basically just create 3 squares and write in or draw in 3 different activities that you want them to do. Or you can take pictures of different things around your house. You do not need these fancy program things, but you can take pictures of the Magna-Tiles. You can take pictures of drawing. You can take pictures of a trampoline or whatever, and put it on a piece of paper and allow them to pick 3 choices. I think I have 2 different choices. Oh no. Allow them to pick different ideas of what they would want to do. When Katie and I used to do a lot of home services, this is something we would create for every family, is how to help kids become more independent with choices. And it really is a choice board of activities. And you say, okay, I'm going to go make dinner. So pick 2 choices, and you put those like down below or on the choice. Like you basically have a thing like this, and then you have a piece of paper like this. So they put the choices on, and those are going to be the 2 things that they are able to do. They can do any of those choices. So you do on, like, you talk to them about their choices, and you talk to them about what they want to do, and then you make the choice board. So then in that moment, when you have a phone call, when you're doing something with another child, they then can come up with these on their own.
And it's a great way to slow down their play, so they're not just kind of in their playroom, just kind of pulling out everything.
Yes.
So they really can actually like enjoy the one thing that they're choosing and have like zero in on it. I would say choice boards are also great for like going to the playground, so they don't just run into a playground and start just kind of running circles and doing everything. Like, do you want to do slides first or swing first, and that type of thing, just to kind of give them a little bit more structure. And then they do that one thing, and when they're done, they can move on to the next thing. And it's always helpful to have them structured a little more.
And what is really helpful about, as Katie was saying, is picking slowing down their play, setting up your house in a way that they don't have access to all toys. Again, when we used to do home services, this step 1, and I really should have talked about it with the title of the slide of the PowerPoint thing, is to set up your house in a way that they don't have access to all toys. Because what happens is 2 things. Either they, in a dysregulated way, take everything out, and then you have a tornado of a house, and they haven't actually played with anything, or they have access to everything, so they want to do none of it. Whereas if you put everything in a bin, and you put bins away, and you bring out a bin, and it's on the choice board, then they're actually going to be excited to play it. Like, for example, in my house, my kids are a little bit older, and I was bringing all the Play-Doh to Fuse because I don't want Play-Doh in our house. Oh, all of a sudden, it was the activity of the weekend, is they got back into Play-Doh. They had not played with Play-Doh in a very long time. But when you don't have access to something, and then you do have access to it, then it becomes something that is engaging for them. So really setting up your house with minimal access to things except what you put out. And even in a playroom, visually organizing everything is so important. As you know from Fuse classes, it's a minimalist environment everywhere, and that is 1000% on purpose, to decrease the visual stimuli, but also to help kids focus in rather than get distracted outwardly. And that is really important in your home as well, to help kids feel regulated and understand how to access and initiate play rather than just having it all at their fingertips. It's almost too easy that it becomes quite dysregulating for them. The other thing you want to create in your house, in every house, I think, is a cozy corner for kids to go to. So like when you were talking about Molly having a hard time in the morning, if she's really having a hard time, a cozy corner, however you want to set it up, it can be a beanbag and that's it. It could be a tent. It could be nothing. Like a lot of our cozy corners, funny enough, have dog beds in them because they're cushy and they're easy to put in there. Same thing as bean bags. You want to have a place where kids can go to calm their bodies down. It's not a punishment place. It's not a timeout place, but it's when when your child is feeling overwhelmed, it's like a calm down zone, a chill out zone that they can go with, like sensory fidgets and sensory things that they can use to calm themselves down, even like a, what are the sensory bottles that they're just watching the thing comes down, like a sequence pillow is always helpful. Just things that are helpful in a calming down really are so important for kids to proactively learn how to slow their engines down. And we have them in all the classrooms. We have movement spaces outside the classrooms because we want kids to be able to access it on their own, advocate for themselves that I need a break. And at home, what you want to say is, I notice you're feeling very frustrated. You know what? Let's take a second. I'm going to go calm down. You go calm down in your own space, and then we'll talk about whatever it is a little bit later. Having them be a part of creating the calm down area is really a great thing because it's not a punishment. It's a fun area that is their own personal area. So having them come up with the pillows, the stuffed animals, the beanbag, creating their space is going to help them see that as a positive rather than a negative. Another, as we talk about calming down, a big, huge thing is making sure, especially on these long breaks or like the winter when the weather stinks and you can't go outside as much, is creating sensory breaks or sensory choice boards for kids so they know they can get that proactive movement. I think it is very underestimated or underappreciated how much movement we're giving your kids during the day and how much that helps them be able to focus and regulate in activities. There is like a direct correlation between dysregulation and anxiety, because as your body starts to feel more and more uncomfortable, the more and more anxious you're going to be. We as adults compensate for that all the time. Like if I'm feeling, I don't know, super anxious about something, I'll go to the bathroom, I'll take a walk, I'll get out of the space that is making me anxious and making me feel dysregulated and get back into it. These kids need us to help them with that process. There's so many different ways we can create movement throughout the day. Movement really helps kids be regulated. If you're noticing, which happens on the weekends, like at my house, that by 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock, it's just like your kids are either breaking down over everything or just like crawling up the walls, it means you haven't done enough movement before that, so that by that point you've already hit the witching hour and it's hard to go backwards. If you kind of create movement breaks within your day of like maybe it's before lunch, after lunch, like a mid-morning, like you have to kind of think about it and plan them in and do them, even if your kids are doing well and doing something and they're coloring and they're really focused. That is great. But then when they get up from coloring, their body needs to move. So you want to do that proactively and think about like, okay, 5 more minutes of coloring and then go pick something from our movement board, so that they're getting a lot of that input throughout the day, so that they feel more regulated, their body feels better, and then you don't get that slow derail into having less and less coping skills throughout the day. The one last thing I was going to bring up, and this is just like a random visual, is for whatever is tricky in your house, create a kindness jar, create a follow the family plan jar, so that you're working on positive reinforcements rather than constantly nagging at your kids to listen, follow the plan, be a first-time listener, come to the dinner table. Changing a pattern, changing a like embedded brain schema pattern is really better than just saying it over and over again. if you reinforce it positively, of course, we're not a reinforcement school, but if you reinforce changing a behavior to replace a negative behavior, using a kindness jar or using a think about the group plan jar is really helpful in highlighting the positives. And you never take the pom-poms out of the jar, like on the kindness walls at our schools, we'd never take a heart off the wall, because you have earned that moment, and we want to just keep filling the bucket and keep highlighting the positives, whatever that is, so that your kids are become more and more addicted to doing that positive over getting the attention from the negative. That is kind of my little short 2 cents of how to maybe add, modify, accommodate your house to be more successful for your kids. I don't know if you guys have specific questions